Howdy, 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 everybody. Teresa here with
Friday.
It is True Crime Sunday again. We have a different kind of a case for you today. This is one that Brad and I are both very familiar with. He has even more familiar with it than I am. So he's going to do the majority of the yakasmaka.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Carry it away, mister.
Thank you, Mrs.
Mrs. Now,
this,
bloom it while he talks.
Okay. This is, this particular case, it happened back in 1973, and I knew...
In Casper, Wyoming.
In Casper, Wyoming. And I remember, I was 13 years old when it happened.
That means I was 9.
Yep. And I remember the absolute horror of hearing about it, about me knowing some of the parties involved, and I remember the anger that me and a bunch of my classmates felt after this had happened. I mean, it's an absolute horrific story. I can't believe people would do this to another human being.
Do not have your children in the room.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this, because it's not something that they should be hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. The case started, I had to make some notes because, I mean, I remember a lot of it, but actual dates and stuff, I was a little unfamiliar with. Mm-hmm. And this happened, it started on September 24th of 1973. There were 2 girls, they were half-sisters. The youngest one was 11, and her name was Amy Burridge. And the older sister, she was 18, and her name was Rebecca Thompson. And they went to, their mom asked them to go to a store to pick up a few things for her, and it was about 9 o'clock that evening. And
she asked the 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And then she asked her sister.
Yeah, and
kind
then
of as a nice thing, hey, you want to ride with me?
Yeah, Rebecca asked Amy if she wanted to go too. And they did, and they went over to the store.
And of course, Rebecca, the youngest one was thrilled to get to go with her big sister.
Yep. And the store wasn't too far from their home, and in fact, I know exactly where the store is.
Me too.
There's a church there now.
I've been in that store before.
Yeah. Yep. And they headed on over to the store about 9 o'clock at night, and then about a half hour after they.
You didn't tell them what the store's name was?
Thriftway.
Thriftway at the time. Yep.
And about half an hour after they left, Amy, the 11-year-old, called Mom and said, we got a flat tire, but there are 2 nice men that's going to give us a ride home. And, and you got to remember, this is 1973 where things were not nearly as tense security-wise as they are now.
And this is Casper, Wyoming, where it was just a small town anyway, small city at that point in time, where, there's not very many people in Wyoming anyway. There's more antelope, and so you had this false sense of security, of safety.
You did. And at that time,
people didn't lock their doors or their vehicles.
Yep. And it was just, everybody was too trusting.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be interrupted.
Go for it. I told you anytime you want. And, like I said, Amy called Mom and told her that these 2 nice men were going to give them a ride home. And when she got back out there, these 2 gentlemen had the girls at knife point, and they forced the 2 girls into their car.
Can we stop for a minute?
Sure.
The reason that their car had a flat tire was that these 2 men had flattened the tire.
Yeah.
While they were in the store, while the girls were in the store.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And I believe the 2 men were 27 and 29 at the time.
They were known to be derelicts and be in trouble with the law.
Yep.
And
quite
stuff.
Often.
Yes.
And so they forced the 2 girls into the car.
And one more thing about the case is they had been used. I don't know if they had been using drugs that day, but they had been drinking and running around town, and they were basically looking for some trouble to get into.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
sorry.
and that was out of the book. That,
Yeah.
That I've read it and Teresa read it.
Yeah.
And they forced them into the car at knife point. And initially they went up on top of Casper Mountain. And then they ended up driving out to Fremont County Bridge, which is almost 40 miles outside of Casper, and it's on a really, really back road where even on a Saturday during the day, you don't see very many cars out there. And but they drove out to Fremont County Bridge, and this bridge, it's not much bigger than a one-lane bridge, and it's a metal bridge, and it crosses this canyon with the Platte River flowing down in the bottom of it, and you have very, very steep sides on both sides, and from the bridge down to the water, it's 112 feet.
Yeah, and I mean, it's jagged rocks
Yeah.
and just...
Yeah, and and I've both Teresa and I have been out there several
Yes.
times,
Oh.
and
And when you realize...
yeah, all what
Yeah,
happened.
man.
But yeah, these men, they took the two girls, and the men's names were Jerry Jenkins and Ronald Kennedy, and like Teresa said, they're very, very well known to the law enforcement. But they took the girls out to the bridge, and they got Amy out of the car first, and the one, well, I don't remember which one it was, took Amy. They were parked they were not parked on the bridge, they were parked on the side of the road. And the one guy walked Amy out to the center of the bridge. And the last thing Amy said to Becky was, "I love you, Becky." And he got her out there, and he threw her over the edge. And 11-year-old little girl. And then he came back, and they took turns with Becky. I don't know if we can say the R word, but I'll just use R.
Yeah, they ardor.
Both of them took turns, and they
Yep.
did it several times.
Yeah.
And then they took her back out on the bridge and said, "Here, you get to go meet your sister." And they threw her off the bridge. And just the thought of it, about 15 years ago, my little brother, I think it was about our first meeting together.
It was.
And I wanted to show him around Casper where I grew up, and I took him out, and it was kind of interesting because we grew up 2,000 miles away, and we're both just terrified of heights. And I remember walking out about midway over this bridge and trying to look over, and it made me so queasy just looking over the bridge, and I can't even imagine.
When Becky landed in the bottom, once she couldn't find her sister, and she was looking for her, and she was yelling for her, and then she realized that she saw headlights, and that she thought these guys were gone, and they were not. They were kind of waiting to see, and so she hid, in a darkened area, clinging to the rocks with the ice cold water running over her, and until they finally left.
Yeah, and the Platte River in Wyoming, a lot of people, you're not used to how fast the cold weather can come on like it does in Wyoming.
And I know it's September, but Wyoming, September.
Yeah, we've seen it snow in August, and, July and August. But they left, and I assume they headed off back toward Casper. And Becky spent the night down on the river's edge. There's some steep sides on both of this canyon, and the one side has boulders. I mean, probably, I'm guessing volleyball-sized boulders, volleyball, basketball, that go all the way up the side. And as it got close to the morning, let me back up a little bit. Becky found a place that was kind of recessed, and she tried to cover herself up as much as she could with her hair. She had very, very long hair, and she spent the night. When she hit the bottom, she had a broken hip, and so she spent the night in the rocks. And then getting on toward morning, she managed to climb out, which to me is just, it's almost
If you
inconceivable.
could see which a normal clothed person that didn't have an injury, you would think, oh, I don't know. And I mean, she was wearing only a sweater. Of course, she wasn't wearing anything on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And overnight in frigid temperatures. And,
Yeah.
That may have helped her a little bit with the pain.
Yeah. That's very, very true.
But her to be able to crawl out of there is
that is just, I mean, that, to me, that shows such a strength of the human spirit.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, she managed to climb out. And then the next morning, there was an older couple that was, they were heading out there fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw this girl that was very much beaten up, and she was bloody, and she was nude from the waist down. And they got her in the car, and they drove her back to town.
Mm-hmm.
And she had told them that she had been arred and beaten severely. And it is such a miracle that she survived.
Mm-hmm.
And they got her back into town, and this is where I need to kind of look at my notes a little bit to see. Like I said, I see one of my notes that says expound on the bridge and the height and everything, but 112 feet down to the bottom is just...
And even when you reach the bottom, if you go in the water, you're going to hit jagged rocks and stuff. This is a canyon.
Yeah. And you can, and actually, if you are interested, you can, if you type in Fremont County Bridge,
mm-hmm.
or if you type in Amy Burridge and Rebecca Thompson, it'll bring up
Casper, Wyoming,
and it'll bring up pictures of the bridge, and it's just, I mean, to me, it is just so inconceivable.
Yeah.
And the pictures of the bridge don't even do it justice.
No, and you get out there, it is just, like Brad said, you look down and it is just sickening to your stomach. Even if you didn't know anything happened there, you would be going, oh my, and then when you know something happened, it's like...
Yeah. And, but, with the broken hip, she climbed up, and that couple took her into town. And when...
the woman wrapped her in a blanket.
Yeah. And then when Rebecca was talking to the police officers knew the two guys. Mm-hmm. They'd had several run-ins with these two men. And I hate to call them men, because anybody that does something like that. But they had several run-ins with these two men, and they actually picked them up within just a few hours. I was thinking it was like 5 hours they had them picked up. And, another thing that is just, it's another thing that shows to me the strength of the human spirit, because it went to trial, and Rebecca, she had to face these men in court.
Yeah.
Because this was back in the day where they
Well, can we back up just a little bit?
Sure.
To finding her sister?
Oh, yeah, you'll have to talk about that more.
Okay. Well, of course, she was unable to find her sister. And she looked. And she looked. So they had to call in a dive team. They went out and looked. And down there, first of all, you have to basically rappel down there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a dive team, and they called in this one guy who was kind of the best in the area. And he went down and drove, and he found her. And, her body was very mangled up and stuff. And he said to the to the sheriff. He said, "Don't ever call me on a dive again." And he never dove again from that point on. He was that shaken up. And, you know, their poor mother never, ever, ever forgave herself for doing something simple, as in she was sending Rebecca to the store to get a few items that she needed for the next day to make a meal. Her husband was out of town and stuff. And, you know, she knew Rebecca didn't mind running over to the store, didn't think anything of it about her taking Amy and stuff. But, you know, I don't know how long Rebecca's been in the hospital.
It was quite a while.
Yeah, because, I mean, it was a severe break. I don't remember what other injuries she had.
Yeah, I don't either.
Of course, she had some injuries from being AR'd repeatedly. And then the psychological.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, now you're talking about the court case and having to face it.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how strong she had to have been facing these two men in court.
Brad actually went to the same elementary school as Amy did.
Mm-hmm. And she was a couple years younger than me. And then Becky was 5 years older than me.
Yeah.
And it went to trial, and it only took the jury 5 hours of deliberation for them to find these two guys guilty, and they laid down the death penalty. And I remember we were talking in school, and you know, there was a lot of us that we were so very, very angry, and you know, younger kids. I mean, like I said, I was 13 at the time, and you know, it's hard to imagine a 13-year-old kid, especially back in those days, thinking of things that vicious and that violent to do, you know. And the general consensus was we all thought that they should tie a wire around their testicles and throw them off the bridge, you know, which is the biggest thing we thought of. And it was just, you know, I remember the days in school after that till the end of the school year, that it was a real solemn, somber attitude in the school that we just couldn't
And back
believe.
though, they didn't have counseling at school. You would have something happen to one of the classmates, and they did not have the counseling or anything. So, I mean, it was a very different time.
Yeah. You know, and also with us, that was the year that on Christmas break, one of our schoolmates ended up drowning in a pond. And, you know, so you had those two just boom, boom. And
Let's go back to
the case.
Course,
Yeah. But, yeah, they were found guilty, and they had the death penalty. And, you know, the biggest thing with Becky is just, you know, how hard is it to move on with your life? I mean, she had a lot of, I know she had a lot of trust issues. She had a lot of survivor's guilt, where, you know, she wondered why she survived and her sister didn't.
And why she, you know, if she hadn't invited her sister, you know, and everything. And I mean, she went through a lot of therapy. She was sexually assaulted by one of her inappropriate actions with one of her therapists. And, you know, when you go and you to trust somebody and then they do that, about the only person she could really turn to was the sheriff that had gotten pretty close with her, just as a friend, nothing more. You know, with the whole family, and that she could really talk to. She did not have an easy life from then on. It really was very tormented, and you know, it was just...
Dave Davala was the sheriff. He was the one of the sheriff's deputies on the case, and
was that the one that was close with the family?
And I always really liked Dave Davala. I mean, he was just he had a kindness and gentleness to him that
it was kind of like that kind sheriff image that you see sometimes on TV. It really did exist.
And you know, I mean, there's so many people who were so grateful for the kindness he showed, and it wasn't anything, it was just,
That's how he was. He
yeah,
just was a very caring.
yeah,
He
and
was the kind of sheriff that you would want, law enforcement that you would want.
yep, yeah, and he's the kind that give law enforcement a very, very good name.
Yeah.
And but both Kennedy and Jenkins were given the death penalty,
And they were in the
and
Wyoming State Penitentiary.
mhm. And unfortunately, on this case, that was when the death penalty was ruled inhumane, and they commuted everybody with the death penalty to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and that was in 1977.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I was thinking that they might have been able to get parole, because I remember hearing that Becky had to go to some of the parole hearings.
Did you?
Yeah, and and I mean that.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, that poor lady. I mean, everything she went through, but then she wasn't really allowed to get past it. I mean,
Well,
she
victims
had to.
of these horrific crimes basically have to keep reliving it every time they have to go up,
Hmm.
because the person who did it to them is up for parole again.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of like
and
they're being re-victimized over and over
hmm
again.
yep, and then from 1977, we'll jump up to, I believe it was 1992.
Well, no, over the years you would see Becky
Yeah,
in the store.
yep,
You knew her.
yeah,
You talked to her quite a
yeah.
bit.
And she was one of these where, and I ran into this a lot, where you would talk to people, and when they first started talking to you, they were very, very, very wary. They didn't want to
Hmm.
let people in. And, if you didn't treat them like a freak, if you
Hmm.
didn't be overly sympathetic, you'd be very
And you
respectful.
weren't overly prying and
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, and I had heard that Becky was she was very mischievous, and she liked pranks and practical jokes. But
Oh,
whenever
before this?
no, that was in that space
Oh,
between.
was it?
And when I saw her, she was very, very quiet and reserved, and very, very solemn. And I did read
That's what I
where,
mean. Afterwards, she
yeah,
wasn't that way anymore.
yeah, no, she still was
Oh,
with
she
her,
was
yeah, with her
with
close
okay,
friends.
with trusted.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, I remember the first time she smiled, and I was just, blown away, because I mean the stuff that girl went through.
Mm-hmm.
And there again, when she was AR'd by a counselor, and I
Yeah.
had read where she had issues with drugs and alcohol,
Yeah.
and it was just,
Which isn't surprising.
yeah, and it's just amazing that she survived.
Mm-hmm.
So and we'll jump to July 30th of 1992, and Becky and her boyfriend at the time, and her 2-year-old daughter. Becky wanted to take a ride out to the bridge.
Wasn't that her fiance?
Oh,
At
I
the
don't know. It
time?
might have been. Yeah, it might have been. I didn't remember that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but they drove out to the bridge, and Becky asked her fiance if he could go back and check on her daughter. And when he got to the car, and when he turned around, she was gone.
Yep.
And they found her body down at the bottom of the same place where she was thrown over. And I remember Dave Duvall said that Becky was killed 19 years ago, and she just died last night.
Yeah.
And just like I said, just how horrifying it was in with everything. And, you know, to think that that happened, you know, in the same small town, you know, because that store that they went to was only about a mile from the house where I grew up,
Yeah.
you know. And I remember after school, when I was in elementary school.
Look how close it was to the junior high we went to, babe.
Hmm.
It was so
Well,
close to the junior high
and
we went to.
my aunt, she lived just over the hill,
Oh yeah.
toward Fairdale.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was just a couple blocks from my aunt's house, and
You never know where evil is.
yeah, and like I said, the whole thing was just, you know, it was just so horrific, and you know, I'm glad that people never forgot,
No.
you know, and
There's a plaque at the school for Amy.
yeah, and
I remember our girls went to that school and they remember seeing that plaque.
yep, yeah. In fact, one of them pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I really feel like that Kennedy and Jenkins should have been brought up on a second murder charge.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell what the sheriff did with one of them?
Oh, years later, I believe it was 98. Actually, I did write that down. Or maybe I didn't.
You didn't?
Yeah. Let me check. Oh, yeah. It was October 29th of 1998. And Jerry Jenkins died in prison. And I thought he had some severe heart problems, if I remember right. Yeah. And there was one sheriff's deputy, and actually he was retired. I don't want to say his name because he has passed away since then. And you know, I want to make sure that the town has the utmost respect for him and everything that he did. You know, because he used to talk about that a lot, because that was just
Really got to him.
Yeah, it really, really tore him up. But this guy showed me a picture that somebody took of him urinating on Jenkins' grave. And he was just, you know, he had a hard time. There were several of them that just wanted to, you know, they wanted to do the Old West mentality of take these two guys out and hang them. And
well, I mean, they had no remorse. No remorse at all. There is I can't remember what his name is. He wrote, it's called Into the Night, and it was a book written about this case.
Ron Francel.
Yeah. So research that. It's a heck of a book. He did interview both men, and I was mad at the time that I read it, because he almost sounded like he was almost feeling sorry for them and the life they had before they did this.
Yeah.
And I actually talked to him on Facebook Messenger one time. And I told him how mad I was about that. And he had to do it that way, or else they wouldn't agree to the interview.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he said that's why he had to do it that way. And he was a person that kept his word. So it wasn't that he was sticking up for them. It's just that's what he had to do to get there.
Okay.
You know. And once I thought about it, like, yeah, that makes sense. But because he, in the book and stuff, he mentioned Brad played a lot of baseball, and he was extremely good at it. And it mentioned, you know, the safe neighborhoods, and wasn't he around your age, the author?
I believe so.
And he talked about many of the baseball players by name that were the same ones that Brad played baseball with, and mentioned Brad also. And I'm sure it was because there were too many names that were all the same boys that were on your team and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, about how the illusion of feeling safe in the neighborhood, and you know, parents didn't really worry about their kids. I mean, they didn't. As growing up in Wyoming, our parents didn't worry about us at night. And we normally had to be in, but a few summers, you know, summer nights, the parents would conveniently, I think they all must have planned it, forget to call us in, and we'd get to play freeze tag or whatever, while it was getting dark, and maybe even a little bit after it was dark.
Yeah.
Of course, all the porch lights were on and stuff.
Yep.
And but I mean, we didn't lock our door and stuff.
No.
I mean, after that, we darn sure did.
Yeah.
But before that, no, there was this false illusion that nothing would happen, and there were no bad people around. I mean, this is Casper, Wyoming. I mean, the least populated state in the whole 50 states. I mean, you wouldn't think that, evil lurks. But the two men who were bored and decided that they were looking for something to get into. And, one of them was married at the time and had a child. And I think it was Jenkins.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I mean, to be bored and decide that this would be okay for you to do to another human being, period, it's just horrific.
Yeah. And one of the things I've thought of over the years is how these two ladies, how they would have turned out if they wouldn't have had to go through that, and why did they have to suffer so much, and unfortunately with everything that happened, maybe it was better that Amy passed away then and there, and she didn't have to go through all the...
We're just going to hope that she passed away, pretty fast.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she did.
But, I mean, it's just the idea of, what her sister went through all those years. She really, really struggled. She finally gained trust in a counselor who then took that trust and,
Yeah.
I mean, she couldn't catch a break.
Yeah.
She couldn't catch a break. Her mom had moved away with her stepfather. They moved away to California. She couldn't handle, I think, being there.
I can imagine.
She never forgave herself. But it was a very sad case. I urge you guys to, research some of that on YouTube and just general newspapers. I was so sad when Brad came home, because he would come home every so often and say, hey, yeah, I saw Becky in the store, and you would tell me how she was doing and stuff. And sometimes she was doing a little better, sometimes she was having a rougher time, especially around the anniversary date and stuff. She had a much rougher time of it, of course. And then I think you told me before it hit the newspaper that she was gone, that she suspected that she, committed ooidide. You're not supposed to say that word, I guess, now.
Really?
Yeah. But she made sure she was no longer with us. And, I don't know, what does YouTube think they're doing by making it where you can't say all these certain words anymore? Really? We're supposed to talk about suicide prevention. And to get help, but you don't want us to say the word?
And why can they...
I mean, you're supposed to talk about being safe and and the victim not feeling ashamed if they have been raped, but we're not supposed to say the word? This is the Not For Made Children video. Why can I not say... It's YouTube dictating what you're allowed to say anymore.
Yeah, instead of freedom of speech.
She was raped. She was raped repeatedly. She was beaten. Her sister was beaten. I mean, that's the way it was. I mean, it was horrible.
Yep. And she was thrown off this bridge, and you got this river running down there with all these big boulders and stuff, and it is an absolute miracle that she survived the fall, much less climb out of there.
Yeah.
And, and Teresa and I both encourage you guys to do some research, just look into it. And like I said, if you type in Amy Burridge and Rebecca Thompson, that it will pull up pictures of the bridge and everything, and just just imagine her climbing out with
You
a
know, and I
broken
mean,
hip.
back in those days, you didn't think anything of it. If these two gentlemen that you know, they were good, almost 10 years older than Rebecca, offered to give you a ride home, that was not something uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, we wouldn't do it, but back
Yeah.
then there was an innocence, and you
Mm-hmm.
would not think anything of it. The mother didn't think anything of it. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well,
Yeah.
see you guys in a few minutes.
Yeah. And and that's back then. Casper was almost like a larger Mayberry. You
It
know.
really was.
Yeah.
See, I'm going to work on another headband
So.
here when I talk to you guys. But it's a very sad case.
Mm-hmm.
I was so sad when Brad told me that she had committed suicide and no longer with us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, left a beautiful 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, that's about all we have.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you guys tomorrow, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hug your loved ones close.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, we have to teach our children not to trust anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
nowadays we're taught that if that would have happened, first off, we would all have cell phones, but that you should have gone back in the store and waited.
Yep. Oh yeah.
You know.
And that's what even if I'm just running down the street to the store, I always make sure I give Teresa a kiss and tell her I love her. Because you never know.
Never
Is that
know.
going to be the last time you see?
Never do know. Yeah.
So.
So anyway, I hope you guys had a good Sunday. We did. We just kind of been resting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so extremely tired. I know that I'm very low on iron. I had to quit taking my iron supplements because it was just making me, quite frankly, too constipated. And, so I'm going to have to talk to my doctor about that because I know I'm very low on iron, and that's part of the reason.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we had a good day,
Mm-hmm.
and love you guys, and we do cherish your friendship so very much. If you're new here, please like and subscribe and share, even if you're not new. We love your comments. We love reading your comments. Please never hesitate to comment, and remember, do something nice for somebody else, and then do something nice for yourself. And remember that we love you guys, and we do cherish your friendship so very much. I see you, mister. Don't make me beat you on camera. And, as always, everybody say bye, Brad.
Bye, Brad.
Bye, guys.